We are moving on to our presentations, which I think that everyone is very eager to see. I would like to ask for the introduction session our first speaker, Ms. Gabi Dove, professor at Institute of Urban and Spatial Planning at the Berlin University in Germany. The floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, everybody. I feel like all of you are a little, well, so don't worry, we're going to get this through. Whose heritage matters for whom is my question. And thinking again about the Faro Convention, there is no way to have the paper and the computer, this is bad. So let us move on. All of you must have read or seen the European Council's Faro Convention. So this is why I won't read what I have written on the screen, but I want you to recognize again that the right to engage with cultural heritage of their choice is a fundamental idea in this convention. And this is to be thought without, independently of ownership. Ownership is not the aim. It is not an appropriation to be only the owner, but it's an appropriation to become part of it. So the consequence of appropriation in this case is affiliation, or in English, belonging to it. And no one will be owner. So this is a fundamental point independently of ownership. So the right to heritage, which is very much, in that Faro Convention based on the Declaration of Cultural Rights, is a cultural, not a legal claim or right. And it's, as I said, no claim to ownership. And there is no local nor spatial restriction, which is a very interesting point in this Faro Convention philosophy. And of course, something we have to admit, there is no responsibility in a very concrete way, in the way an administration would be responsible for sites and actions, but it is a shared concern, and this is a very strong point in civil society's engagement. So I think this is why the Faro Convention is a very strong let us say, tool to engage with civil society all over Europe. So one of the most important features in this Faro Convention, I repeat it, perhaps many of you have heard it, but I think it's really fundamental. The spatial and social framework is not national, not local, not regional, but it's open in space and time. And this is a very fundamental shift in heritage making, although of course all of us, all of you will always also have to go into arguments about local, regional or national affiliation of the sites you deal with, but the Faro Convention allows to think beyond these borders. And this, I think, is a very fundamental shift in heritage philosophy. So, to show you what this means, if it is not a legal claim to ownership, but a wish to belong, perhaps somewhere where I never went, to share a concern for things I never saw, I made a journey just to prepare for this forum, because I thought if I'm going to speak in Poland, I have to know more about Poland. And this is how I did a seminar in this summer on the German-Polish borderland, and we had an excursion to go and look. So what did we discover traveling across borderlines along the Odra? The first thing, of course, we had to know was that this has been a landscape of war. It has been a landscape of transition, it has been a landscape of development, and, of forced migration for two kinds of people, for Germans and Polish people. All the same, because the so-called westward shift, I think this is a terrible word, but it always has to be repeated that this is what it is called in German, die Westverschiebung des polnischen Territoriums. So the westward shift, what looks like a wonderfully round country nowadays, like an ideal map of an ideal country, has not at all lived thus for many, many, many centuries, but it's a very recent reordering of the landscape. You see all these borderlines shifting around, and well, supposedly I have this pointer. Well, does it? Yes. So this is the line I am speaking about, and the color blue indicates former German parts of the country. So traveling across the borderline, what did it mean? I discovered the Odra, which is a very broad and very beautiful river. And of course, this borderland has its own very strong beauty, but it holds very strange items, I would say, or places. Crossing the Odra, going into Poland, nowadays Poland, made me step into a different kind of past. I call it a neighboring past, because it's not the same. We do not share the same past, we Germans and you Polish people who are here. It's not a sharing, it's a neighboring. And neighbors means, well, we can be friends, but we can also not be. And this is, of course, something that happened in history. Crossing the Oder, you see the river, it was very broad, and when I came to visit, meant for me to step into a different past. What did I find? First of all, of course, the past is not a given thing. I should repeat this. Like Asman and Hauptwachs and other people have always said that the past, of course, and history even more, because history is more of a discourse, I would say, is nothing that grows by itself, but it's constructed. And so it is a social creation, the past. So what kind of past did I find, and did I create myself in Küstrin, Koszin? It is nowadays called the Pompeii of the North, and this is what remains of Küstrin. You see what you see. This is what you can discover when you walk across former Küstrin, now old town of Koszin. And this is what it used to be until the end of the Second World War, a Prussian fortress, a very unloved one for those who dealt with German history, because this is where the Prussian king imprisoned his own son and had his son's friend killed in front of the prison. So this is the famous Friedrich and Katte affair. But this is going too far. This was the town of Küstrin, Koszin, and it was bombed, and it was in ruins. And what is still visible now, I mean, this is what it used to be. Yeah? There is a castle. You may identify it on the left side of the image. There is a Gwen Square. This was Küstrin in the 1930s, and this is what it is now. What happened here? The little town got severely damaged during the ongoing march of the Red Army that had to cross the Oder, and did it. And so the city was very, very much damaged. And then all the German inhabitants have been, of course, thrown out because of the geopolitical situation. The Oder was meant to become the limit between Poland and Germany following the treaties of Yalta and Potsdam. So this is how the old Küstrin happened to be on the Polish side. And no one really wanted to live there because it was on the borderland, and it was in a very difficult situation in global politics, and of course it was severely damaged. This is how all the bricks of Küstrin, this is what is told, went to Warsaw for rebuilding of Warsaw. And Küstrin no longer exists. What does this mean to us? This is a landscape of loss, within a landscape of former sorrow and pain. This is a landscape of loss, of course, and the loss is the heritage, in my opinion. But whose heritage is the loss? Is it the loss of the Germans? Is it the loss of all of us? Who lost what in this affair? Is it affair of bricks? Shall we go to Warsaw and locate the stones coming from Küstrin? And what would be their patrimonial status? And what would be a solution nowadays? Rebuild Küstrin? New old houses for whom? Who would connect to them? In my opinion, this is an archaeological site of young history, and who wants to connect to it? What did I feel? Whose heritage is it? Whose is it not? And to whom does it matter? Seems to ask himself my very bewildered student tutor, Dominic, who is in the image. Moving on to Stettin. Stettin used to be a German town, if I may say so, and you can recognize the modern German part in this area, planned by James Hobrecht, who did the extension plan for Berlin in 1962, and the old on this side. And so I want to speak not about the whole story, of course, because I have limited time, only about this area. This is the lower Old Town, and this is the upper Old Town, and this is, of course, a new broad street, a new broad bridge system. By the way, a very sculptural and lovely building. I'm afraid I should not say so, but I liked it. And this is the area I'm going to speak about around the St. Jakob Cathedral. New modern architecture, a scheme of the 1950s. This is what it looks like. This is what I liked there. And this is what is happening now. So rebuild very small houses around the cathedral to put it back to its former surroundings. This is a question of shape and scale, of course, because the street is broadened and the cathedral was meant to be visible, and now it is enshrined in new old architecture, which is, of course, our problem. So what is happening in Stettin? Modernity is now put away to give place to retro architecture. I don't like this very much, whose past is now visible here. This is the post-war Polish town. And being a German, I thought I would connect to the German history of Stettin, and of course I did in that historistic part. But in this part, I connected to the modernity of the modern Stettin, and I liked it a lot, and I think this is a very valuable architecture, and it has a lot of family around all over Europe in East and West, looking at Le Havre, at Canterbury, at Mainz, at Hanover, at Cologne. This is what happened everywhere in Europe. This is European heritage, and on a very high level of urban design. My last step into Wrocław, Breslau, yesterday's images. So, what happened in Wrocław? Well, this will be, I suppose, part of what is going to be talked over today. The restored ring, and my liking is the Nowy Targ, the new market. This is a modern architecture of the 1960s, and high-class modernity in the gaps, filling the gaps in the inner city. But what I like most is this. So this is what I photographed yesterday on the marketplace and reproducing these towers. This is, in my opinion, the most interesting encounter for myself in Wrocław. My own attachment to modernity and to the history of modernity becomes very obvious when I look at these buildings. And these buildings, and I wrote Jadwiga Grabowska-Hawrylak, a very interesting architect I discovered. I didn't know anything, so I had to look through internet and publications. And it's, I think, one of the best skyscraper I have seen for a long time, and it is part of a European family of other big sculptural houses in Skopje, the Kędzutanga project for the rebuilding after the earthquake, in Novi Belgrade, the new project for the new capital under, of course, Tito's regime, and Berlin, Hans Scharoun, a German hero of modernity and progress and the free form. So, this is where I want to stop. These are the heroes of post-war modernity, of post-war modernism that becomes historic in these, well, not only days, but years. And it is, in my opinion, a European heritage of high class and of a semantic complexity regarding the different histories in East and West Europe. And it would be, for me, whose heritage matters for whom, a heritage that should matter for all of us, because it is not national, it is transnational. And I think this is an approach the Charter of Faro proposes for heritage communities and for the heritage itself. I'm ready. So I had 2 minutes still. I could have spoken less fast, but I'm finished.
Thank you very much for this very interesting approach from the different perspective than we have here on every day.